So I appreciate you guys being here, and let's get started. So I want you all, I purposely left it out of some of your bios because I wanted you to explain it yourself. So tell me, or tell us, what do you consider your niche? We can start with Chandra. We'll work our way backwards. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am a full-time freelance journalist, so um, I have learned that you have to be flexible as a freelance journalist if you plan to make a living. However, I would say I do have a passion very similar to Rhonda here on the panel to write about the Black community, Black issues, Black topics, social justice, and that type of thing. But I would say I try to expand that and interpret that in different ways, meaning I can write a profile of a Black figure, but I also write about education, social justice. So I think I have found a way to talk about the Black community, but also be diverse in expanding how I cover the Black community and not limiting it to one aspect. So I would just say, I always tell people, the tie that binds is that I'm really big into social justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, and in many ways, that ends up being covering the Black community. So
Mhm.
that would be my short answer to covering, 25 years of work.
Okay, Rhonda.
Okay. Yes, I do cover the Black community. I do it more so from a lens of pop culture and history. And I cover a variety of things. The most things that I do a lot of entertainment writing for sure. And then I kind of have a specialty in doing a lot of the stuff that other people don't want to do because I do have a research background. And so when it comes, especially when it comes to doing historical things, I definitely have a niche in that. But even when I do historical, I'm looking through the lens of Black pop culture. I actually started out as a book reviewer for a publication called the Quarterly Black Review of Books in New York City. And then I worked as an associate editor at a rap magazine. So I come from different spectrums and I've lived in different parts of the country. So I'm from Chicago, went to college in New York, grad school in Mississippi, lived in LA, and now I live in Atlanta.
Wow, all the cultures. Okay, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. I was listening to what Chandra said, and I was thinking about a niche. And I've always loved that Robert Heinlein quote that specialization is for insects. So I never felt like I had to have a niche. And I was very, very, very lucky early in my career to be located near Kennedy Space Center when I started my career. But I was the morning anchor for the radio station. So that exposed me to a whole bunch of different topics because it was public radio. So I got to learn a lot, just nonstop education. And then I'd get off the air and I would go out to the Space Center and cover whatever they had going on. So it was just luck in a lot of ways. I had always had a passion for space because I was a kid, that grew up when they were launching rockets to the moon and people were walking on the moon on my TV when I was little. So that was always there, but I just sort of fell into something that I had a passion for. But it's been hit or miss. And to Chandra's point about being flexible, um, staying in one niche is not always possible. Sometimes you have to go where the money is because you have to pay bills. So I have a secondary niche, which has served me very well, and that is breaking news. And was just lucky that that was something that came sort of second nature to me. And so when they eliminated my space and science job at CNN.com, where I was for many years, I became a homepage editor for the website. And I did that for 17 years, and I would sneak off and do space in my spare time. They would let me, they didn't care, we're getting space and science coverage for free. So having that flexibility and knowing what you love and trying to stay focused as much as you can on that, but also developing all of these other skills. I started in radio, but then I noticed that the internet was kind of getting started up, and I literally knocked on the door at CNN.com and said, what are y'all doing here? I love the internet. What do you do? And literally knocked on the door and talked my way in to a job that lasted me for another 18 years. So being able to keep flexible. I love that you guys all have these amazing niches. And Rhonda, I'm going to go buy your book right away. I'm fascinated with being an Atlanta native. I'm fascinated with African American history. This is African American History Central here. So I think, yeah, have a niche, but also allow yourself to learn new skills, be flexible, and to recognize that you might have to set your niche aside for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I was very lucky. Literally the last day I had at CNN.com, I had lunch with one of our former interns, Liz Landau, who now works at NASA. I never said, Liz, I need a job. I just was talking up a storm. Next thing I know, she had connected me with a guy who hired me as a freelancer. And I've been a contract writer / website producer for NASA for 3.5 years.
Awesome.
So the last thing I want to leave you guys with, and I told Mark this, is be kind to your interns, because Liz started as one of our interns. Be kind to everybody. I wasn't always. Sometimes I could be a real, you know what, at work because I get stressed out. But just remember, every person is there in your life for a reason. Treasure them, get to know them, value them, spend a few minutes just talking about them. So your niche really needs to be the people that you encounter. Just get to know them. And Market can tell you our paths have crossed multiple times. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you know, it's just worked out that way, because these people you meet early on, they're going to be in your life for your whole journey.
Yeah.
So I'll stop preaching now, but just be really kind to everybody. Keep an open mind and an open heart.
Yes. Words of wisdom. Anjali.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor to be among these really talented and experienced panelists. I started freelance writing about 19 years ago. I was actually still an attorney. And I started with parenting articles, started writing parenting essays, parenting humor pieces, a little bit of parenting reporting. My pieces went into those free regional parenting magazines that you see in plastic bins outside of grocery stores and libraries. That's how I started while I was still practicing law. And then I sort of transitioned to leaving law and doing freelancing full time. My timing wasn't great because this was basically during the recession, 2007. So articles that I used to get $50 a pop for, but I would be able to sell to multiple markets, right? It would take me 1 to 2 hours to write and I'd sell it 10 times. You know, a lot of those small regional parenting magazines dried up during that time. I thankfully transitioned to book reviewing and interviewing authors, which I still love to do to this day. And after a number of years of doing it, though, I've always been very political, and I had been pitching political type pieces and social justice type pieces to various publications. And I just had a really hard time breaking in as a freelancer. And, you know, a lot of editors would write me back and be like, well, our staff writes this sort of thing. But I got more and more active on Twitter and started just tweeting how I felt about politics. And then the work just started coming in. I got editors approaching me. Oh, can you write about that? Can you write about this? So I've been writing about politics for about the last 4 years. I mainly have focused on voting rights and voting barriers. And this is where sort of my legal background, which was not at all in voting rights, I can get into a court decision pretty easily and understand what it means and the legalese. So I do a lot of that, but I'm also a volunteer organizer, an electoral organizer. So I get out the vote in Georgia, and particularly in the Asian American community. And so my writing is very much tied to sort of what I see on the ground as a grassroots organizer. And I've done a lot of writing as well, in particular about Asian American voters and sort of the trends and the barriers to voting and the difficulties that are specific to that community. So I've been very lucky in that, you know, what I choose to do in my free time, which is organize in the community, happens to dovetail really nicely with what I like to write, which is, you know, politics, social justice, and in particular, voting rights.
I don't know what happened. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. So my first question is, how do you set yourself apart as a niche writer, as a niche journalist? Like, if you know, there's so many journalists in this world, how do you convince the editor that this is your specialty? What preparation or what work do you have to do to set yourself as a niche reporter?
Well, for me, being in an entertainment space, I often bring opportunities to different people. So, like, maybe, well, last year, for example, I got pitched Balake, who stars in Bob Hart's Abishola. And I noticed that on a site, OK Africa, that they cover a lot of music, but not a lot of television and film. And we happen to be at the point of the rise of African entertainment. So there are a lot of actors and actresses who are tied to the continent. And so I started with that. And like Yvonne Orji, who is Molly on Insecure, she had a comedy special, and she only spoke to me because she wanted to be on OK Africa, which is also prominent in her, native Nigeria. So.
Okay. Okay.
I would piggyback off of what Rhonda said. And also would Anjali, is it Anjali?
Anjali?
Yeah, Anjali mentioned you start by, when you talk about a niche, you think about what do I love anyway? You know, I always say what you would do for free, but you expect to get paid for it, hopefully. And so for one, if you're very immersed in this community, then you're going to know all the who's and what's what. So that's the first part of it, is familiarize yourself with who are the players, who are people talking about, what are the shows or what are the topics. And then you present some form of access, as Rhonda mentioned, to this editor, like, oh, I can get a one-on-one with XYZ, or he's willing to go behind the scenes and show this to me, or whatever like that. I think what you want to do is present stories that are not being told. You know, that's what I always aim for, and that's kind of my specialty, is the story that no one's looking at, the ones that people overlook or they don't think about because they don't have the diversity on their staff that would even know to pitch that. And so, and then also at the end of the day, success is going to get you attention. So when Rhonda does this story, or Anjali or Amanda does this story, and it gets a lot of hits and it gets a lot of attention and it gets shared and it's posted on social media, that gives you more leverage, to do that, to do it again. So I would say, you really need to stop trying to do what everybody else is doing and try to figure out the stories that are not being told, the unique stories. And if you can, reach out to the subjects before, don't promise anything, but if you can walk in with a confirmed, I can get, this, this topic or this person to talk about something that they've never talked about before or whatever, that's always going to benefit you. And also, as I wrap up, I was going to say, kind of what in relation to what other people said, it's good to have this specialty and to do these things. But I will say, for example, I was in Atlanta and I worked at Fox 5, I worked at Atlanta Magazine, and Atlanta is a Black Mecca, it's HBCUs, it's entertainment and all of that. Then I get married and move to Colorado. No celebrities, no HBCUs, no Black culture. I mean, not none, but it's not central.
Yeah.
So understand, as some of the other people mentioned, your niche may have to evolve. So, but the new thing was I became a parent. So now I care about parenting stuff that I never cared about. So just understand that your niche may have to evolve. And even as you get into these new arenas, parenting or history or whatever, think about the angles that you can pitch that are unique to that subject that need to be told.
And also I would add, whatever publication that you are pitching, read the publication, know what they've covered, go through it. Don't pitch something that they covered 2 months ago. If they have a person that regularly does that, then it's off limits. Like I will tell you, for example, I do stuff for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, for those who are not in Atlanta, AJC. And I do entertainment stuff. So, you know, if you know at the AJC, you know that's Rodney Ho's territory. So I'm very careful in, you know, if Rodney, I ask, you have to be respectful of people's beats and so forth. So I'm never going to tell someone that I can cover something if Rodney already has it, because this is his sphere. So now if there's something that he cannot cover and that's not being covered, then I can go ahead, but also be aware of what people's spheres are and be respectful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amanda and Anjali, do you have any addition to that? Or
So the way I look at approaching a pitch is that whatever publication it is, they already have a staff of people that can write what I want to pitch them. I have to convince the editor that I am the only person who is qualified to write this, right? Even if it's about a general topic that a lot of people know a lot about, right?
Mhm.
I have to bring to my pitch my unique perspective, my fingerprint, right? So
Mhm.
that this editor has no choice but to assign this piece to this freelancer and bypass the staff, because no one on the staff will have the same perspective or have
Mhm.
access to the same sources, or
Yeah.
perhaps they haven't done the research that I've done on this particular niche issue, whatever that issue is, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I try to remember when I'm pitching, is that I basically have to do it. I have to pitch better than someone on the staff would pitch if they were pitching this topic. And so I spend so much time researching before I pitch something, especially if I've never pitched that editor before. And I start lining up sources. Like I will reach out to people and be like, look, this is not an assigned piece, but I'm thinking about writing about this. If you have a minute, can you tell me what you know? And would you be open to being interviewed if I end up writing this piece for a publication?
Mhm.
So I feel like I do a lot of pre-work for the article. And I feel like as a freelancer, you don't really have a choice, right? I mean, you really have to come with your A game every single time to convince an editor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of our members, or a few of our members, are first season journalists or students, should I say. And I know when we're in college, we all have this fantasy and dream of all the movies that you've seen of journalism and Sex and the City and all this good stuff. Everyone's, going to have this lavish life. But as a student or first generation or first season journalist, what is your advice to someone who wants to be a niche writer? Would you advise that for someone who's straight out of college? Or would you say get all the experience you can and then maybe roll into becoming a niche reporter?
Sorry, I try to turn it off and it's like I want to say something. I definitely believe that, and I was so glad that Amanda started with that, because I thought it was just going to be this panel like live your dreams and you have to do this and it's you were born to do it. And I'm saying, coming again from a freelance perspective, you need to be somewhat flexible, but it's not just about making money and just being flexible. I think what I see when I speak to a lot of, young journalists is they think they're going to graduate and just go work for Essence and the New York Times. And I'm just saying, you don't have the skill yet. And so to me, any opportunity should be embraced because you're going to learn and grow as a journalist. So great example is, and Jatika can even speak to this. I was a graduate of the Journalist and Aging Fellowship. And when I did this, I don't know, I was what, I don't know, 30 something. And I didn't have any knowledge or not even a particular interest in aging. It wasn't something you think about when you're 20, 30 years old, but I saw it as an opportunity.
Mhm.
And I learned about things about the aging community. So I could see a 20-year-old like, I don't want to write about that, but
Yeah.
they gave us money. They sent us on a free conference, which we networked and met. And I will honestly say that information is more relevant to me now. And there's things that I learned in that fellowship. So I would just say, honestly, I am not a supporter of just jumping into a niche automatically. I think you can do Amanda's idea where you say, this is my passion and I'm going to commit to it, but be open to any opportunity, because I hated breaking news journalism, interestingly enough. And Amanda, I hated it. I hated covering everybody's devastation and fires and deaths and all of that. But I will honestly
Earthquakes.
say that I
Fires.
learned great news gathering that I still use today. So I knew quickly that I was going to be a features person, but I still use that day to day, get in touch with people, find people, get research, all of that. So I would say be open, but always have in the back of your mind, what is my dream job? And work towards that. But I think early on, you can pigeonhole yourself. And I can just say, as a person that's gone through 9/11, the 2008 recession, COVID, flexibility will keep you alive. So challenge yourself to do both, but understand what your ultimate goal and dream is.
Yeah.
I wanted to add on to that. We're talking about flexibility in terms of the topic, but stay flexible in terms of the medium, because I think most of us in this group have seen that medium get pulled out from under us in one way or another. Mark Woolsey, who's patiently watching it, both of us come out of radio. And yeah, radio's been kicked around. Now it's podcasting, but I'm sorry, it's still radio. But it was, you know, just crazy to transition. I was, like I said, just honestly, a lot of good luck that I was able to transition from radio to the internet without going through any major training programs or anything. I just sort of snuck in. But that's not possible nowadays. Everything's all buttoned down, and you got to compete in the Hunger Games on LinkedIn, and it's crazy out there. So have that broad base, that foundation is what I like to think of journalism knowledge. And Chandra, to your point about going out and cover breaking news. Okay, yeah, I'm a nut and I do love it. And you can drop me in the middle of any disaster and I'll thrive. And I don't know why. I consider it a mental illness. I'm also a licensed counselor, so I can diagnose myself.
So basically, you're like the ER doc that loves that adrenaline.
Yeah, and if it's either something you really like or something you find out really quick that, no, I don't want to be part of this. But if you can do that job for even a little while, you'll be okay in almost any setting after that. If you have anchored or covered a story in the middle of a crisis, and for me, especially when people's lives are on the line, like all these horrible wildfires we have going, you develop a lot of compassion for humanity. You understand what is really going on is very different than the detached person working at a desk somewhere writing about wildfires. It's like, you've been there with these people and walked through the ruins with them. And it's different. It's different. So it changes you and it helps you to make things concrete and real in your mind. So I think that that's really amazing. But now we have so many other ways to deliver the message. Anjali, you mentioned Twitter. Well, you can be a journalist now and just live on social media. You don't have to write 1,000-word articles and those kinds of things. So I think keeping in your mind, maybe you have a notion of what medium or where you want to work. You might not get your first pick, but learn as much as you can about all of them. But also wanted to think about where you want to be on the planet. It's different now, right? We can all work remotely and things like that, but you don't want to get in a market that you hate, in a place you don't want to be, and suddenly find yourself getting promoted to the point that you can't really move where you wanted to be all along. So get where you want to be. Get where you want to be. So those are the other two flexibility things that I think about.
The breaking news is also a great way to get connected to the publications or the major publications. I've had a lot of opportunities where I got in, they called me because someone referred me or something, and it was like, quick, we need you to go and do this. So now they know you. So then when you pitch that feature story or something else more related to your niche, you're kind of in there, you have the emails, you know, the numbers. And so I would honestly say a lot of opportunity dream publications that I was in, it started with some breaking news type situation that they called me for that, but then I kind of put you into the network. So even with 2020, George Floyd was the hot topic, of course, in addition to COVID, and people were calling me about what's the black perspective and black this, and can you talk about that and write these things. But then I stayed in the loop, and a year later I still work for those publications. So just remember, it could, but if you bomb on that breaking news, then you might not get that second opportunity. So keep in mind, you want to be sharp and able to respond to that, and one story can turn into multiple follow-ups and features and long form pieces and things like that, because now you're the expert on that situation.
I
And
should
she-
add, I'm not a trained journalist whatsoever. So
Me neither.
my passion was in English and history. I had an early passion for Black everything. So my friends were like, oh, Rhonda, she's into all the Black stuff. So when I had a friend who was going to be a civil engineer, and I like saw that she had collected like Vogue since she was in 6th grade. So I championed her, and I was like, girl, you don't want to be in civil engineer. And I helped her, and she ended up working on the American launch of Marie Claire. And so I was actually in alumni affairs in New York City working for MIT. And so I had a lot of free time. I love culture. I would go to like exhibits, and I was into hip hop. I go to clubs. I was always out in the nightclubs. I had friends that were musicians and so forth. And I always loved television too. So people knew these things about me. And when I got like in New York, the first time I got paid, my friend knew that I would like this Black exhibit. And so she sent me there. And I was talking to a guy who I didn't even know had a publication. And everyone was gushing over this exhibit. And I was just like, this sucks. And explaining why. And he was just like, I'll pay you to write that down. And then as like, I thought I would work in like music or something. I actually, like Anjali, I was going to go to law school. I was very active in, I went to Columbia University. I was active in the Charles Hamilton Houston Pre-Law Society and so forth. I've always been a part of like Black student organizations and different things. But people saw things in me that I didn't see. My mother was a teacher, but my family, for the most part, I come from a working class background. And so the idea of being a writer, even though like I read my whole life, and I was actually more into creative writing. Like I said, I studied like African-American literature and so forth. And so I took creative writing classes and all that kind of stuff, but I've always been interested in culture. I've been interested in, other people's backgrounds and heritage. I've been traveling since I was 6 weeks old, and not traveling the way other people say they travel, where they're going to Europe and the Caribbean and Mexico. No, I grew up traveling from Chicago to Mississippi like they were next door, going to small states, going to places that a lot of people would not go to on their own. And so at an early age, I noticed regional differences and different, like how people say words in other places.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really, like things that, like sometimes it could be like coming to Atlanta, like, before T.I. became a star. I was writing for Creative Loathing, and I let my editor at the time know. I said, I think this album is it, and T.I. is going to be the next big superstar from the South. And my editor let me run with that, and I was right.
And that brings me to another question. Is there a level of honesty that you can have as a niche reporter than you can have in other, just writing about anything? Like if you are the expert in this topic, is there a level of honesty, or even, dare I say, opinion that you can have in your writing that just any other, run-of-the-mill journalist might have?
I think what Rhonda described should be the foundation of a niche. Is this is your world. Like, I mean, Amanda says she loves science. I don't know that there's some way that you can measure it, but I'm saying when I read and critique things about the Black community, and I can immediately see, oh, this is problematic, because I already know what the critiques are and what the issues are. But if it's your world, I think that it gives you a certain extra weight in what you're saying. And the difference is you have to be able to articulate it. You don't need to be like, because I said so, it's a bad exhibit. I think
Yeah.
I always, tell people, consider yourself a lawyer. This is your closing argument. This is your opening statements. This is your case. So when especially if you're doing a commentary piece, and it took me a long time to feel comfortable with commentary, but then I realized, hey, been Black all my life, and I studied this, and I'm in the community. I'm qualified. It took a while for me to get there, but I think what Rhonda described is make this your world, immerse yourself in this world so that you will make the compelling arguments. You will have the great pitch that Anjali mentioned, because this, this is very important, and you will be able to convey that in your pitches, in your work, in your commentary. And so I just think you are making yourself an expert, and that's because you read about it, you live it, you experience it. And that's what it sounds like everyone on this panel has done, is they get that they have to sell this. You don't just walk up, I'm an expert.
Yeah.
And I will add, like, for example, because I said I cover TV a lot, I spend most of my day watching, TV. I try my best because I specialize in Black entertainment to see almost everything that involves a Black person. So, and that helps when I do profiles, because people are flattered when you know that they were in something, like you saw them when they first started out. Like I interviewed Sonequa Martin Green, and she was in a small independent film called Rivers Wash Over Me. And this was like in 2009. And when I went to her IMDb, I was like, oh my gosh, like I saw it. And she was just like, I can't believe you saw that, That was one of her very first acting jobs.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that writing on a specific topic, does that cut back on competition?
Well, I don't think you should look at things as, for me, I don't look at it as for competition. Do I have a perspective to add? And also, a lot of the things that I cover, other people just don't cover. And if I didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. And that's a lot of the stuff that, when you're in this specific community, and especially when you look at mainstream, like now I have a few mainstream publications that are coming towards me because they are missing a lot of things that are important. I will tell you that when Surviving R. Kelly came out, I was writing for NBC Think. Now, I also was writing for different Black publications because they did have Black people. They're like, oh, we have that, we're good. But I was one of the few people who early on, because I've had a long time relationship with Lifetime and I have access to different accounts, I watched the whole series. And I said, and I told people, and people thought I was crazy, I said, this is the nail in the coffin to his career. There is no way that he's coming back from this. And I was able to convince my NBC Think person, which her audience doesn't even know R. Kelly like that. And that was the #1 article all weekend. And then because it was NBC Think, you had different Black radio stations that picked it up, but others did not take the time to just sit and watch it all.
Yeah. Wow.
I add something too. One of the biggest challenges of being a freelancer is that you don't necessarily have established, comfortable relationships with editors because you don't know them, right? You're either pitching them cold or maybe you've written for them once or twice before, but very different pieces. So you don't necessarily have a sense that you have the kind of relationship with an editor that that can allow for tension, right? Meaning, whether you can disagree with an editor about how a story should be approached. And the best part then of having a niche is that it will give you the confidence to push back on an editor, right? I've pitched something, they've said, we don't want it quite like this, we want it like that. And I've had the confidence to reply in an email with a list of arguments against why the story can't be told that way and why it should be told my way, right?
Yeah.
This is what a niche does. It really makes you, not only proves to an editor that you're an expert, but you prove it to yourself because you are so certain in what is missing from stories that are being told about a particular issue, why other reporters are getting it wrong, why it's problematic how some publications are talking about whatever topic it is that you want to write about. And then it also just gives you the confidence to realize a publication isn't going to get it right, so I'm going to walk away, right? Like it helps you realize that you're not just working on this piece, you are in the process of shaping a career. And is this something that is going to make you proud? Is this something that is going to really add to this area that you want to write about in a way that doesn't harm people or harm specific communities?
Right.
And this is why I sort of love having, a particular beat, is because I can tell any editor, no matter how many awards they've won or whatever publication it is, you're doing it wrong, right? And if you're going to keep doing it wrong, it's going to be time for me to walk away, right? Even if I really want that byline, right? It's not, I don't get big bylines thrown at me, okay? I mean, it's very challenging for me to get them, but if I know something isn't going to be told the way it needs to be told and the way that it's most accurate and most valuable as a story, I'm like, you know what, this is my area of expertise and I'm not feeling this anymore, how this is going, so I'm out.
And what Anjali is talking about is protecting your brand and having integrity in who you are. And so if that, at the end of the day, you want to build a career, and one payday is not worth sacrificing your credibility in your niche. It is just not worth it.
Right. Well, I want to open the floor for questions from our viewers and visitors. So if you have any questions, if you can make it quick, you can ask it yourself. If you can't, just type it in the chat and we'll ask for you. So I open the floor.
Yeah, quick question. I'm a freelancer. I've been freelance for 8 years, but I worked in newspapers before that. But the question I have is, what is it that you all particularly like about the freelance life or freelancing? What's the good stuff about it in your view?
Generally, most people I know, they're doing it for flexibility and just the feeling like they can have a little more control over, I think I always liked it because I'm sort of a free spirit, but at the same time, when I became a parent, I felt like I don't want to have to get permission to go to my child's, school program, and that's what you have to do, or if you need to take some time off. So I find that that's the addictive quality for most of the people I know, is some sense, and it's not completely free, but it feels more free because you get to control your schedule. And to some degree, especially if you've established yourself as pretty good, then you can maybe be more selective on what you write about, who you write for. I think that's the thing, but there are lots of downsides to freelancing that has nothing to do with your side of it. It's the other side, the publications, who hires you, like when you get paid and not really having input. So that's why my partner and I are starting this organization, and I will put it in the chat. Right now we have a Facebook page, but it's not we're going to be doing more, but we're building a website now. But we really need support for freelance journalists, because the professional organizations, as they say, bless their heart, I think they still focus so much on getting a corporate job and getting a full-time job and moving 30 times in your life to go get all these different jobs. And there's a unique need of freelancers that is not met. And so that's why I'm working with Medill at Northwestern with my partner, because there needs to be more support. And we're going to put on a conference that's going to kind of talk about these issues. But but I will say COVID actually helped, because now people are used to the model a lot more. And it took like this epic global pandemic for people to realize, why do I have to sit in your office and get in traffic and do all this stupid stuff, fix my hair and pack lunch and all this stuff to come write? I could write anywhere. So that's what I have found. And for me, and also I will just be honest, as a Black journalist, it's just too stressful dealing with office politics, and I would rather not do that. So my coworker is me. Yeah, my coworker is me. So a lot of people, it's the office politics that they're like, forget it. Right now, I compete with myself.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
I wanted to throw something in on that, because I didn't intentionally become a freelancer. I was laid off after 20 years at CNN. The weekend I turned 60, you guys can do the math there. But the thing that I've discovered about that I really like about being a contractor is, to Chandra's point and what you guys are saying, is if I decide I don't want to go into work or something, I don't ask for a day off. I just tell them I'm not going to be there.
Not available.
And I'm not available. Now I pay my own insurance and I have to pay my own taxes, but in some ways I'm like, I kind of feel more like an adult and not so much like a child, always, get mama, please, may I, daddy, can I, here's what I'm going to do. And when it gets around contract negotiation time and they're thinking, and I'm thinking, do I want to stay here? Do I want to look around? Are there some other options out there? So I don't know. I think if I had known this was an option earlier, I might have thought about it earlier. I don't think it's a right or wrong thing, though, that you have to be one or the other, but it certainly does give you a lot of flexibility and also the office politics thing. Oh, I can't say enough about not being in that mess. I mean, I'm just so relieved to not be anywhere. I work for JPL, and they're on the other coast. So that's as far away from your bosses as you can get. That's awesome.
And also for me, I don't like to be pigeonholed. Like I test drive cars. I like to travel. I mean, I do a lot of different things. And you have, like, I have one publication, like I write about liquor from time to time. And I have a publication that considers that like advertorial. So I have another publication where I can do that. I write for a publication called Zora, where I have the luxury of just zoning in on Black women and issues that are central to them. Even when you had publications like Examiner and like Medium is kind of like a more sophisticated version of that. But there are things that I wanted to write about because I think that there are things that I still want to write about that I think is important that I cannot convince other people that's important. So I can just go and write about it on my own and not worry about others.
Right. Okay, I have a question in the chat from Roxanne Scott. She says, as freelancers, how do you make sure your story ideas are on the right track? What's your process of vetting ideas?
So I have a various cohort, friends who are all freelance writers. And if I'm stuck on anything, I bounce ideas off of them. And this is, I mean, it takes time to develop it, especially if you're just out of school or if you've been, had a career on the staff for a while. I've been very fortunate to find pockets of freelancers who are always getting a text from me or Facebook Messenger or direct message on Twitter, where I'm like, here's my idea. Am I, too far off the mark with this? Or how do you think, I can focus this a little bit? And I have found the freelance writing community in general to be very generous, right? We're all trying to stay afloat. This is an extremely tough industry. It is a constant rat race. And it's very hard to keep it going. So yeah, reaching out and forming a network with other freelancers can be so invaluable, and they end up providing you that kind of, I'm not a trained journalist either. I mean, they've been kind enough to provide me even some of the education that I never really had because I never took a journalism class before.
I think it's important to note with freelancing, and this is where I saw the need with us creating the center, is that when you come from a staff mindset, you just show up to work, you probably do some tax forms or something once and pay deposits and all that. You never have to think about it. You just write articles and, you have to deal with the politics and all that. But as a freelancer, you are a business and you need to operate like a business, and you need to be more conscious about what you're charging for, because a lot of this stuff they expect you to do for free. Like, oh yeah, can you pour through all these photos? Well, that takes 2 hours, but I'm not getting paid for that. So the biggest thing that I see with people is they want to be the proverbial artist that shows up and sings, but they're going to be the ones bankrupt and selling their Grammys in 10 years because I didn't want to think about the accounting. Well, it kind of matters.
I need help.
So that
help.
is the biggest thing with freelancing, is you have to be a business person. And so when people come to me all the time, oh, I want to be a freelancer, I'm like, you probably don't. Because you have to actually be a business. You have to do taxes and all these different things. So just keep in mind, it's not just, oh, I'm free and I don't have to listen to anyone. It's like, you will hurt yourself if you don't get into an entrepreneurial mindset and be more about business more than you most likely want to, because it's sort of like you have to do the creative and the business together. And if that's not what you want to do, it's probably not a good choice for you.
Yeah.
And then also pay attention to the world around you. Like a lot of things, like I didn't write about this, but I had a tweet that went like viral, like 60,000 people shared, right? And it was only because I watched the news on a regular basis. And it was about like business owners saying that people didn't want to work because unemployment is so cushiony. And I was just like, no, people don't want to work for low wages. And it was amazing how that resonated with so many people. But even like, I'm a person, I check what's trending on Twitter. Like, as Chandra can tell you, I'm on Facebook a lot. I post things that are of interest to me. And I'm always surprised because I may post something and then I'll get all these comments. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. So be, a part of the world, be a part of your community, your environment, and see what people are responding to.
Yeah.
And you will get story ideas. I mean, I get a lot of story ideas from social media because I see what people are talking about. And I've not been in Atlanta for a while, but I'm practically sharing breaking news with my friends who live in Atlanta. Like, did you hear there's an accident and you don't go on that road? But like she said, you do need to read papers, read the small papers, read what people are talking about. I think people always are looking for a story idea. I'm like, The story idea is what what people are talking about now. That is the story idea. Stop looking for a story idea and pay attention to what is hot and what people are just talking about in their circles.
And also know that the reader is your boss. So like a lot of times people kind of get that confused. That doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion, but sometimes like there'll be people, for example, I don't get why they are a celebrity, a star, or whatever, but other people do. So it's not my job to place judgment on what a lot of people like. It's my job to speak to you and find out why.
Awesome.
Minus the Kardashians, but I'll be quiet.
I don't
That's
watch
a lot
them,
of,
but-
yeah, that's a lot of people's question. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other questions out there? We got room for one more.
I've got a question.
Okay.
And fortunately, I've not run into this a whole lot, but on a couple of occasions, I've run into editors with either skewed expectations or unrealistic expectations of various sorts, where they want a story in 3 days and they want you to talk to a dozen people, or they ask you to interview people that you know from your own background that it's going to take a while to get a hold of, or they want all this and they want to pay you $50. And you're not going to be able to sell it to 10 other publications, which I think Chandra, you inferred. So any advice that you have on navigating with some tact instead of maybe just automatically screaming at them and firing them, editors that are kind of off the mark in terms of how they work with freelancers?
I would just say my practice is communicate. And editors love that about me. You're not gonna find out the day before that I didn't have something ready. I will have communicated in the process. Hey, Mary's not calling back. I've done this, I've done that. But I would say even more so for women journalists and then add in women of color journalists, sometimes we are socialized to think that we're just lucky to be here and we should just be happy for the opportunity. And it took a long time for me to get past that. It's an opportunity. I'm like, you've been doing this for 20 years. So opportunity is kind of old. But I would just say you have to just be honest and say, for that, I cannot do that. Like you have to be able to say no. And that was the hardest thing for me. Still working on it, but say no. Like I can't do that. I was like, I need at least 2 weeks for this. Because and explain why. Like these people aren't going to call me back, or sometimes people don't call back. But I think you just need to be honest and say, I can do this for that price in that time frame, or we can invest more in time and money, and I can do this in a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and give them the option. And if they're not willing to acknowledge reality, I think you should just walk away. And like I said, I've had to do that because it's like, it's just not worth it. Now, I also will refer someone who might need the opportunity and say, well, I have someone who might want to do that for $50. Again, it's their person's choice to do it. But for some people, it is an opportunity. It's like a big deal. So that's what I would normally do. But be prepared to say no, because I find that most journalists, especially editors who have not reported in a long time, they sometimes are in fantasy land because they just haven't done it. And I had to recently kind of set someone straight. I was like, you understand that people can say no to the interview, right? So I can't make them say yes. And so she didn't say anything back, but I asserted myself and said, no, this is not because I didn't listen to you or I didn't do something right. They just didn't want to do it. and so now I have to start all over again. And that is their right to do that. So sometimes you just have to, like she said, be a child back to them and say, I'm going to bring this back to you because you're not being realistic about what I can do as one person.
And when you do entertainment, there are a lot of people that don't have a respect for that. And they do not understand that it takes a lot of maneuvering to get certain things. I wrote for a publication last year and they weren't they weren't pleased with what Lakeith Stanfield had to say. And the editor was just like, well, can't you just call him? And I'm like, really?
Right.
He's kind of busy.
And I'll just add that, most of my communication with editors happens over email. I feel like as a freelancer, email protects you, right? You have evidence of what the conversation was about and what was decided and what the pay was and what the scope of the assignment was. But sometimes email, you just might miss paths on email, and it really does warrant picking up the phone and calling an editor to hash it out. There's some misunderstanding, miscommunication, expectations are not aligning. And, it might end up becoming something fraught over email that could really, you'll just find out if you call that there was just some, misunderstanding, and that they didn't have bad or evil intentions, but maybe we're having a really stressful day, and it was evincing itself in a communication about a completely unrelated article that you were working on. So, some editors are not the best communicators over email, but you can sort of figure out where they're coming from, and you can also sometimes hash it out much more quickly over the phone.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And just real quick, I want Chandra really quickly to tell your story about Netflix.
Oh,
that would be the perfect story to close out this panel on finding your niche. So if you could really quickly tell your story about Netflix.
I'm not sure what aspect of it, but basically I was just saying that I always try to challenge myself to do something different, or not always stick to my niche, because I think it makes me grow. And so I had really pushed really hard to get an interview with one of the members of the Central Park Five, which became the Exonerated Five, which was the subject of a movie on Netflix. And I had kind of an end like Rhonda described, where I just had this opportunity to interview someone, and I published it elsewhere. But that turned into an opportunity where Netflix reached out to me and kind of said, oh, so we see you're in the social justice. Would you be interested in interviewing someone else for another Netflix movie about social justice? It was called the I can't think of the series, but it was about the what you call it project, Innocence Project. It was a movie done on the Innocence Project. So I would just say, by sometimes pushing out another story, people will kind of see you in that light, and then opportunities will come to you. And I think everyone on this panel described that. So that was an honor. I didn't even know Netflix had a magazine. And I was like, sure, I can write it. So anyway, so I think it was just a great opportunity. So sometimes you may need to be at a smaller publication doing what you love, and people will take note and they may reach out to you. And I think probably everyone on this panel, as we described, I know Amanda mentioned NASA, and Anjali mentioned, selling the story, and Rhonda also mentioned having these moments. So
people reach out to me all day long.
Exactly. So
all day long. I don't even know how they find me. But
exactly, I have no idea. So just remember, stick to your niche. Write those stories that stand out, and then people will come to you. So
awesome.
That's a little bit of inspiration, right?
Yes, it inspired me. That's why I wanted you to share it. That's why I love the story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for remembering that.
Yes. Mark, did you want to say anything?
I have to unmute myself first, but
that would help, right?
Which maybe is not such a good thing. But I wanted to just put in a brief pitch for those of you on the panel and guests who consider joining the national SPJ organization and the Georgia chapter. And Nicole, not to put you on the spot, but if I miss anything, you can fill in some gaps. That we fight for the rights of journalists. We advocate for them. We have gone on record in a number of areas. We also, well, this panel is a great example. Journalism education. And then there's the networking aspect and the purely social aspect of getting to know people. So That's my 30-second elevator speech. And I appreciate you letting me go ahead and barge in and do that.
And just to remind you, I did put in the chat before we all close out, the Center for Independent Journalists. Right now we're on Facebook and we'll be developing a website. So for those of you who would like to get some more of that support, that will be a resource to you. We're starting in September. So if you want to join that page, that will keep you abreast of the things going on. And we would love to work with SPJ, NABJ, AJA, all of those organizations, because we feel that there's more need to focus in, because that is the future of journalism, is freelance.
Absolutely.
And so I consider this an invitation for us all to huddle after this and figure out ways that we can, join forces, I should say. So thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you all for agreeing to be on the panel, for such valuable information. We truly appreciate it. We can't wait to read all your bylines. We can't wait to buy Rhonda's book. And thank you for the promo in the back. I love it. And we'll be chatting soon, and hopefully you'll get a chance to join SPJ or SPJ Georgia and join us on this trek to keep journalism alive and keep it thriving and telling stories. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Everyone was great.
Thank you all so much.